Hi.
Good evening and hello, world. Ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between, welcome to this special human rights conference where we focus on the LGBTQ plus community in Europe. This conference is organized by Dona Daria and Arminius in collaboration with Gay Rotterdam and is powered by the city of Rotterdam. So thank you all for making this happening. Let me introduce myself. My name is Peter van Vught, but you can call me Darling Peter, which is much more easy and international. It's a delight to be here because I'm finally out of my house during this lockdown, so thank you for being the host of this evening. Next to me is Gert-Jan Verboom, my co-host for this evening, who will do one of the interviews later tonight. So, the Eurovision connects people all over the world. They're bringing people together. They share the love of this beautiful event. But there are so many differences if it comes to the LGBTQ plus rights between all the different countries. We're going to open up and shine a light on a community that makes up such a big part of the Eurovision fanbase. Because let's be honest, the LGBTQ plus community, we are there. We are visible during the Eurovision. We're here, we're queer, and we're out and proud. But It's kind of an alternative pride, but we call it Eurovision because the world is still not accepting the LGBTQ plus community the way it should be accepted. But at least it's bringing people together, connecting people, and that's why we are here right now tonight. What can we learn from each other? So what can you expect this evening? We welcome Björn van Roosendaal, Program Director from ILGA Europe, who will talk about the work ILGA is doing and who are the current leaders in the LGBTQ plus emancipation in Europe. We have an intimate talk with North Macedonia contestant Vasil Garvanlief, I hope I say his name right, who recently came out. And we talk with Christy Miedema and Lotte Plugge from Amnesty International about the current situation in Poland. After that, it's time to interact. All of you people at home, you can go to the breakout rooms, but I will explain that later. And you can ask questions, and we have different rooms like the ILGA Europe, Amnesty International, Rainbow Cities, Erasmus Pride, and Door to Door. And the right website link for that, if you go a little bit down on your screen, there is somewhere a website, the right link, and it's like gayrotterdam.nl/something else that I don't know by heart. But it's time to start with our first guest speaker, and that's Björn van Roosendaal from ILGA Europe. Björn, are you there?
Hi, Peter. I'm definitely here. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Gert-Jan, for having me tonight and for shining a light on the human rights situation of LGBTI people in Europe, which I think is very important that you're doing that. I'm going to speak with a presentation, so I hope that you can all see the presentation that I'm going to use to talk. Before I do that, I really want to say thank you to Dona Daria and thank you to Arminius for this opportunity and for creating this moment to look at the human rights situation of LGBTI people. Yes. With that, we can move to the first slide, please. And what I'm going to try to do today is to go a little bit behind the headline stories that you've all been hearing about the news, also knowing that Amnesty is going to talk specifically about Poland, which is an example of which we've heard a lot. So I'm going to talk about a few other things and how I'm going to do that. And the next slide, please. I should introduce myself. We've done that. Peter has done that. Next slide, please. Is by talking a little bit about the work that we're doing. So ILGA Europe is the European and Central Asian region of the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans and Intersex Association. We work in 54 countries across Europe and Central Asia. We work towards policy, legal and social change, and we do so by advocating for human rights at European institutions, movement building with our many member organizations, and of course, through a lot of communication like today. Next slide, please. This is a ranking that you all are very familiar with, and this is actually the ranking that brings so many of us across the regions together around Eurovision every year. It was about 10 years ago that we've sort of stolen this idea and created our own ranking. Next slide, please. And our own ranking comes in the shape of a map. It is a map of the 49 European countries where we look at the context of human rights for LGBTI people in the region. And I want to explain a little bit what we look at every year. Next slide, please. So as I said, it's a ranking of the different countries that we work in Europe. Both looking at legal and policy practices, and we rank countries alongside a long list of criteria, which I'm not going to explain completely tonight because there's way too many details in it. But we score countries and we give them a percentage between the 0 and the 100%. Next slide, please. So the kind of things that we look at include, but are not limited to, for instance, issues like, do governments have in place LGBTI strategies? What kind of policies do they have? Do they have actions plans? We don't only look at whether they have those policies, and we don't only look at whether they have laws, but we also look at whether they implement them. For example, we look at anti-discrimination protection for LGBTI people. We look at family and parenting rights. We look at protection against violence, hate speech and hate crime. We look at legal gender recognition, which is in particular very important for trans and intersex communities. But we also look at issues like asylum and how civil society space for LGBTI organizations is free or not. I get to talk about that a little bit more a little bit later. Next slide, please. Today, I'm going to talk about the results from last year. I know that you'll be very curious to know what the situation in 2021 is like. I'm going to give some teasers, but I'm not going to reveal the results yet, because that is happening next week, Monday, on Ida Hobbit, the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia, when we will be revealing the results for this year. So look out for our communications on Monday. Next slide, please. What we learned in 2020, though, and I think this is a precursor for some of the things we're going to see this year as well, is that there was no positive change in 49% of the countries, which was really the first time where we sent out a message of concern to the world, saying that there was no longer the progress that we had seen in Europe on LGBTI rights. Last year, we also saw for the second year in a row that some countries were even moving back. Some countries were not renewing action plans or were doing poor on the implementation of laws and policies. However, last year, we still saw some progress on trans and intersex rights. And I think looking out to the publication of our new map next week, the big question is going to be whether that progress on trans and intersex rights is still there. Next slide, please. So some of the things that I encourage you to look out for next week, I've just named. I want to talk about the Netherlands a little bit, and I'm going to do that with the next slide, please. The Netherlands is, and I should have stayed with the previous slide, I'm sorry for that. The Netherlands is, thank you. The Netherlands is stagnating already for a few years in a row, which is interesting because I know that there's been quite a lot of discussion in Parliament around LGBTI rights in the last year. The challenge with that, however, has been for the current moment that some of the discussions that have taken place in Parliament have not come to fruition yet. So, for instance, including sexual orientation and gender identity in the Constitution can only be finalized by the new Parliament. And therefore, it's probably not counted in the rainbow map that you're going to see next year. Similarly, there has been discussion on banning conversion therapy, on strengthening the penal code to protect or to increase protections against violence, but those things have not been fully implemented yet. So those are some things to look out for next week. Next slide, please. Next week, in our new map, we'll also be adding 2 new criteria. So we'll add a criteria on non-binary recognition. So can people register without being a man or a woman? And we will be adding legal gender recognition procedures exist for minors. So can people under the age of consent change their gender and be recognized for that by law? That's an important piece that we're adding in the new map that comes out next week. What else to look out for? I think it's a big question what the countries have done during COVID-19, the whole period that has been behind us. We've definitely seen that there's been very little space for LGBTI rights to get attention by parliaments, by governments, probably because of the crisis. But the big question is whether that crisis continues to be an argument good enough to maintain the standstill that we're currently seeing. Moving to the next slide, please. So I'd like to talk. I'd like to move away a little bit from the conversation on rights and policies and laws. It's an important one, but of course it doesn't paint the whole picture of what is important for our communities. We're also, of course, needing to look at the social situations of LGBTI people across the continent. And so I thought there's a couple of things that I really want to be sharing with you in terms of things that we have been looking at the past year, because they tell a little bit the story of what activist organizations across Europe are thinking about at the moment and are busy with. And so I've put here a slide that looks at the impact of COVID-19. What we have seen in the past year is that as a result of COVID-19, there's been an increasing situation in which a lot of people within the LGBTI community felt isolated, in particular in places you can imagine where legal protections are weak and where there's a lot of discrimination towards the community. A lot of people were sort of locked up back home again. It was very difficult for many people within our communities across different countries to socialize. And as a result, it was also hard for some people to do activism. I've heard a lot of stories from activists who had to go back, had to return to their family houses, often not being able to be out in their family houses, which makes activism, as you can imagine, for many people very difficult. Then LGBTI people also often, unfortunately, have been overlooked in COVID responses. So a lot of the services that were available to support people who were facing poverty, who were facing homelessness, did not pay specific attention to the specific needs of the LGBTI community. We've heard too many stories of trans people not having access to the healthcare that they're in need of. For instance, not having access to the hormonal treatments that they're undergoing. But we've also heard a lot of, sadly, stories of unemployment and people who don't have family support, needing to find shelter, needing to find sometimes even food. And so the story of many LGBTI organizations in different places in Europe has been one in the last year of helping people to find accommodation and shelter, but also in some cases even handing out food and financial support to the community. So for LGBTI organizations, COVID-19 has meant that there's been a lot of extra work and often with no financial support to do that extra work. So it's been a very proving year. And as a result, a lot of activists within the movement, unfortunately, are facing a lot of well-being issues. Burnout is a very, very common phenomena at the moment, unfortunately. Next slide, please. Another concern that I want to talk about is, and I know that our colleagues from Amnesty are going to talk about this a little bit more, but it's state-led attacks on the LGBTI movement. So for a longer period of time, we knew that in countries like Russia and Turkey, the human rights situation in general has been deteriorating, and that often LGBTI rights have been used or have been instrumentalized to undermine democracies. And so, unfortunately, that situation has continued and has spread through Europe. The instrumentalization of LGBTI rights, we've seen it in Poland in the last year. We've also seen it in Hungary. And increasingly, we also see it being mixed with attempts of what I would say, unfortunately, increasingly undemocratic governments who are undermining fundamental rights in different places and really are prioritizing within that work LGBTI communities. So in some countries which we work, we've seen increased cases of intimidation. We've seen attempts of governments in places like Turkey, Russia, Central Asia, increasingly of governments to control what civil society is doing and really trying to hinder the work. And as you can imagine, this creates a lot of challenges for the movement. I won't talk about Poland more because my colleagues will do that. Next slide, please. Then another specific challenge that I briefly wanted to talk about is a challenge that we particularly in the last couple of months have seen growing a lot. And that is about organized opposition to the LGBTI movement coming from actors who call themselves or who are referred to as anti-trans or anti-gender actors. A lot of this opposition is coming from and I think an ungrounded fear of LGBTI activists in their work taking away the rights of women or undermining the notion of gender. And so that there is a general opposition in places like Turkey and a number of other countries against the use of the term gender, but more specifically within that to attack trans rights. And this opposition, unfortunately, is very harsh and is affecting not only the ability to make progress on the legal position of trans people including countries like the UK, including countries like Finland, but it's really starting to affect the position of transgender people in general. And unfortunately, in this year of lockdown that we're leaving behind, I've heard way too many stories of trans activists being aggressed at social media, their rights being challenged by people, including sometimes by women's rights organizations. Which obviously is a big concern and something that we're looking at. Is it all bad news? No, it's not all bad news, and I really want to end my contribution with also some positive developments. Next slide, please. Because of course there are still some good things that happen. And so we've seen progress around bans on conversion therapy. You might have seen in the news yesterday that the Queen of England announced that the UK will work towards a ban on conversion therapies, which of course is a very important step, and a number of other countries have also been taking steps in that direction. Another important development, I think, is at the level of the EU. The European Union has adopted this year a strategy on LGBTI rights, a strategy that I think is very progressive and can be a very important instrument to encourage European Union member states to do more. And thankfully, also the Council of Europe has done the necessary things to progress rights. So there's opportunities that we have to work with. Next slide, please. There's also, I think, an important development around movements. Movements continue to grow. So and just looking at our membership has doubled in less than 10 years. So there's more and more activists coming into the space to fight for rights and to be active of conversations about human rights. And that is also something that I hope you're all active in supporting human rights of LGBTI people one way or the other. But that is definitely something that is important. Another, I think, important development is that we've seen increasingly, and we continue to see LGBTI people getting into places of power, into places of importance. So we've got the role models. Vasil, who we'll be hearing from shortly in Macedonia, I think it's an important development that people are becoming visible. In Belgium, where I'm calling in from, we've got the Deputy Prime Minister who is transgender, Petra de Zutter, and that's extremely important that this happens in the Netherlands, where most of you are tuning in from. We've got Vera Bergkamp, the former chairperson of COC Netherlands, who became the chair of the Dutch Parliament very recently. So there's a lot of good things happening, and I think that we should put negative developments also in that context. A lot of the backlash is a response to the progress and to the strength of the movement, the movements on LGBTI rights. Next slide, please. So in ending my contribution, I really want to encourage all of you to do your part. If you're not part of an organization already, become member of an organization, become active. In this time, we need your support more than ever. Donate to LGBTI organizations locally, donate to us. We're organizing an equality gala that you're more than welcome to enjoy, but make sure to do your part, because that is really more important than ever. Thank you very much. That was it for my contribution.
Björn, thank you so much for this presentation. And you all with ILGA Europe, you're doing a great job. So keep up the good work, please. And again, thank you. And if you want to know more about ILGA Europe, go to their socials, because they're very active on their socials and they have lots of great content over there. So follow them on the socials. We go to a very special interview, and I'm gonna switch chairs, or tables in this case, with my co-host Gert-Jan Verboom, who's gonna interview Vasil Garvanlief. And he came out recently as a gay man, and he is ready to be a voice for the LGBTQ plus people in North Macedonia and the Balkans. So, Gert-Jan, are you ready?
Yeah.
Let's switch. 1, 2, 3, here we go.
Here we go. 1.5 meters. Hi, Vasil, welcome.
Hi, that was some beautiful choreography you two just did.
Thank you.
Could it be on the Eurovision stage, though? I wonder.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm alone on stage. Maybe I can rethink it now and have some backup dancers. Hired.
So, there has been a lot going on with you in the media. You've had some amazing opportunities to share your story. I saw you in Attitude, with an Attitude. I saw you in the New York Times. For people that haven't seen all of that, can you shortly introduce yourself? Like, let us get to know Vasil.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Vasil. I'm Macedonian. I'm the representative at Eurovision this year. So I've been in Rotterdam for about a week now. We just had the second rehearsal. Music has been my life. I started out as a child star back home in Macedonia, lived 20 plus years abroad. So I lived 8 years in Chicago, 10 years in Toronto, 1 Milano, 1 London. And music has been my way of life. Music has been my passport. Music has been my freedom along a very, very, very bumpy road. And moved back home about 3 years ago. I should mention that I was also in opera for 13 years as a leading opera singer. So traveled the world. Then I left opera behind and moved back home to focus on a pop career using the tradition, the roots that I believe Macedonia possesses and the talent to promote that as much as I can. Mm-hmm. And it has been quite a journey, especially the last 3 years, very, very successful musical journey in this pop path. But as we know, the moment you enter the pop world, you kind of get put in this different spotlight of judgment, even more than normal, and the responsibilities that come with that. And it wasn't until recently, until this year's Eurovision video for me was released, that for the first time in my life, I experienced such an extreme wave of what was going on. And to encapsulate all of that, it showed me how brave and responsible I must be and use my voice as a public person for all the voiceless out there. And to show people that we will silence the hate with love, positive energy, and in my case, with music.
Yeah. And to like go back a little bit, because you were out to your family before coming out publicly, right?
Yes. So I came out to my family, to my mother in a letter when I was 16. We were living in Chicago. And just to mention, I mean, of course, in Macedonia or in the Balkans, gay is not okay. It's getting better and better and better. And because we lived abroad, I was so lucky that this was never a question or an issue. We just didn't talk about it. I told my mother, and funny enough, my mother, I'm lucky to have such a contemporary mother. She said, "Oh, I knew when you were 6," which to me was, okay, great. But every time I would come home, the moment I land, I had to put on a mask. There was this tension of, you have to fake it, you have to lie, you have to become part of this thing that's just not okay. And I knew I wanted to speak up about it and was always looking for the proper way to do it. And I'm so thankful for Will at Attitude, who got on a telephone call with me and he said, Vas, are you ready for this step? Because it potentially can be very, very hard. And I said, yes, I am, because especially the song Here I Stand that I have for Eurovision this year, it is a song about solidarity, a song about humanity. We are all one, united in music. And I wrote in there, my walls are down, my heart is in your hand. And I remember telling him, how can I expect to touch people? How can I expect to touch the viewers if I don't share my full truth and if I'm not an example to lead for the younger generations?
Yeah. So what was that moment when your story publicly was starting to match the story in your new Eurovision song? Like, what clicked in your head? What was that moment that you thought like, okay, let's go?
The moment the song was chosen, I knew that it was going to have a very special path, because I am a big advocate of love, positive energy. I always say in life we have two choices, the good or the bad, and we choose where we look. And I'm always one of those, no matter how hard it's been, whether it's isolation, deportation. And in the case of after releasing Here I Stand, the list went on to public lynching, to crazy cyberbullying, homophobia, xenophobia. And this was before I even had the Attitude article released. And that to me proved, I said, wow, I have an even bigger platform to speak truth and help be the voice in the Balkans, which I knew was a very, very big step. And thanks to Attitude, it was, I believe, was done the right way. And I don't know how it's going to be when I go home, because we released it and then a few days after, we ended up coming to Rotterdam. But we have already started a wave. Mothers are starting to speak up about their children in Macedonian media. So I feel that the step I took is something that is starting to inspire people, and there's nothing more rewarding than that.
Yeah, I've been in contact, as you know, with the LGBT center in Skopje. And I don't know if I will pronounce his name right, but Kocho? Yeah, he also stressed to me like how important it is that you are visible and that how proud they are of you. What I wanted to ask though is like you're also the person, Vasil, and your story, your song goes into reflecting negative things into light. I saw some things on your social media, how people respond to you. That is some heavy-duty light turning that you're facing right now. Like, how are you dealing with that at the moment?
I am surrounded by a beautiful team who support me and believe in me. And I believe in the message and the story. So I'm very focused. I don't read many of the comments. Yes, there's messages. And I admit, since the scandal that happened with the music video, the threats and the hate messages come on a daily basis. But that's something that I'm not going to say I'm shrugging off, but I'm using in my performance, especially with the metaphor we have that we will turn darkness into light. I will stand up.
Oh, oops.
And just staying calm and focused so I can deliver.
Yeah. So, yeah, your hotel Wi-Fi just like glitched a little bit, but we could like understand you.
Only the last 10 seconds, so.
Yeah. Like, what do you want to give like the younger generation that you want to be a voice for? Like, what kind of advice do you want to give them? Like coming out, exploring, being themselves. Like, what are the Vasil tips for that?
I will pass on a message that I heard from Maya Angelou when I met her in the States. She said, child, always go from truth. No matter how hard it is, if you come from truth, nobody can touch you. And to add on to that, yes, truth hurts. I said one of my favorite lines in Attitude, the ones who mind won't matter, the ones who matter won't. No, the ones who mind won't matter, the ones who matter won't mind. And it's not easy, but believe in yourself and what's in here and use that light in there and just let it shine. It might sound cheesy, but the more you believe in that, it has helped me, and I trust that it will help you all.
Thank you so much. We do have a little surprise, though, like at the end of your interview, and I think you already know. We did a little collection, and we're going to donate 500 euros in your name to the LGBT Research Center in Skopje.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so that they can continue the work on the ground. And thank you for being visible, and thank you for this interview.
And I'm gonna ask you another question, just shortly. Are you like excited, or are you afraid to go back home now the story is out there in the world?
You know, I am not afraid because people have my back. And that's the beautiful thing of the community. I always say our community is funny. Our community can also be our worst enemy. So even to give advice to that, be nice to each other. You know, we have to support each other. So the beautiful thing of the Attitude article that came about, yes, the haters tried to attack, but this is where the global community stood behind me. Mm-hmm. So people have your back. And if I'm there, if I can be there for you, I will have your back. So we'll see. You know, I always say stay in the present. At the moment, I'm so focused on this amazing thing that's happening that one day at a time.
How excited are you for next week? Yes.
That was the answer. We had the second rehearsal today. So it's getting there. You know, first rehearsal was a different beast because of the adrenaline, the rush of finally standing on a stage. And I'm so glad that it happened in Rotterdam, in the arena, that after such a long break, I finally stood on a stage.
Yeah.
And today was more settled. You know, things were settled. I'm delivering and the technicalities are starting to line up. So I'm ready, and just keep sending that love and I will give it back to you.
Yes, you deserve all that love. And talking about love, let's be a little bit less serious. Are you enjoying the Dutch boys? What do you think of the Dutch boys?
I wish. I'm single and ready to mingle, but
you're not single. Okay, okay.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, you are? Okay. Well, just walk around, enjoy the city, and you never know who you will meet.
Yeah, great tip. From the hotel to the left.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
That's the only time I'm allowed to leave the hotel, so there we go.
That's true. Okay, well, enjoy your stay here in Rotterdam and enjoy the whole experience of this beautiful event, Eurovision, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Fasil, for this. I go here, I think. Thank you, Fasil, for this interview. And thank you, Gert-Jan, my co-host. We go to our next interview, and that's with Christy Miedema and Lotte Plugge from Amnesty International. And Amnesty International is a global movement of more than 10 million people who take injustice personally. They are campaigning for a world where human rights are enjoyed by all. Let's see if they are here. I'm going to talk with Christy Miedema, who is volunteer coordinator for Central and Eastern Europe at the Amnesty International Netherlands office, and with Lotte Plugge, who is member of the regional Amnesty group here in Rotterdam. Hello, ladies. I see both of you. I think you're both muted. But we're working on that.
I'm not.
You're not.
I think, yeah.
And that's Christy. Hi, Christy.
Hi.
Hi. Could you start with telling us what you are doing for Amnesty International?
Yes, I'm coordinator Central Europe and Eastern Europe. That means I'm mainly working on human rights violations in Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine. And increasingly, especially in Poland at the moment, and it has always been an issue in Belarus and Ukraine, LGBT issues are a topic of concern.
Mm-hmm. And welcome, Lotte. Can you hear us? Yes, there you are. Could you tell us a little bit what you are doing for Amnesty International?
Yes, I can. It's a little bit difficult because now we have Corona, so we're a little bit limited in what we can do. But
yeah,
I think most of the time we're just creating awareness for the situation in Poland right now. Just so through organizing events online and for flyering in the city of Rotterdam, of course, beautiful Rotterdam. I think that's the most what we do right now.
Yeah, because of course we're living in this pandemic, this crazy world, so everything is happening online. And thank God that a lot of things are possible to do online. We're going to talk about the current situation in Poland. What's happening right now in Poland? Could you explain? I would say Christy.
Yes, that's a pretty broad question, but if we look at what's happening in Poland at the moment, we see that there is a massive backlash in the past years. You could trace it back to 2015 when the current government took over and really started on a course of anti-LGBT propaganda, of clear depictions of things, of an existence of a gender ideology, an LGBT ideology that would be threatening power. And that discourse has been in place since 2015, and we really see actual effects of that on public opinion, for example, which was actually becoming more tolerant in the years, say, up to 2017, and which is now backsliding in Poland. You see it's having real effects on the LGBT community, which feels massively marginalized by the fact that all of this propaganda is being spread over state media. So the state television is spreading all of this discourse, and the major politicians are saying this, the president is saying this, the prime minister is saying this. And one of the most visual aspects of that new policy and that new discourse that is happening is, and you all will have heard of it, the initiative of the LGBT-free zones that are happening all over Poland.
Yeah.
About 1/3 of Poland is now.
Could you tell me something about the LGBTQ plus free zones? Like, what are those free zones and what's happening there?
Yes, so these, I think a lot of the what is happening right now in Poland, you must understand that is rooted in ultra-Catholic lobby groups that have a lot of influence over the current government that don't want to lose their backing, and they are also one of the say evil geniuses behind this proposal, behind this idea. And these so-called zones, there are different kinds of zones. Some of them really declare themselves to be free of LGBT plus ideology, or sometimes just even saying free of LGBT plus in general. Some of them are taking a different approach and say that they are more pro-family, and then very consciously, of course, defining a family as consisting of a man and a woman. So there are different ways in which these statements are framed, but they all come down to the same. They are stigmatizing
specific behavior also?
Sorry?
Also specific behavior?
Well, it's they are stigmatizing behavior. They're stigmatizing a certain group of people. They're stigmatizing what they call an ideology and what we all know is not. It's of course not much more than that. Like they can, there is no police agent standing at the border of those towns and saying you cannot enter. But it has a very real effect on people. If you know that your own community, that your city council, that is condoning this kind of statement.
Yeah.
And of course, it is having influence over people of authority who feel that they can get away with certain things or don't have to don't have to process your complaint if you are being attacked, or it has very real consequences, even if it doesn't have real practical implementation.
Yeah. Let's go to a case that you are working on. It's about 3 women. You have freedom of expression, of course, but they have offending religious beliefs. And the names are Elzbieta, Joanna, and Anna. Could you tell us something about this case? Maybe, is it more easy to stick with you now for now, Christy? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So Elzbieta, Anna, and Joanna, they took action in 2019. There was a lot of concern at that moment. I also remember myself following a lot of Polish accounts on Twitter that in the beginning of 2019 or around Easter 2019, there was an exhibition in a church in Poland, an altar where people put information about sins that are happening around the world. And 2 of the sins indicated there, next to things like hate and greed and all the sins that we know in the world, were things like gender or LGBT+. There was a lot of outrage about that in Polish society. And Elzbieta, Anna, and Joanna are 3 of the people that took action in response to that. So they printed posters of a very famous image of Madonna with child with a rainbow halo. Yes.
There we go. Thank you.
And show it.
Yeah.
And they spread that around that particular church in Płock. That was seen by churchgoers, by the priest of the church, who felt very offended in their religious feelings, and thus they were charged and threatened with 2 years in prison.
But it even went, like what I read, from the Elzbieta, they just knocked on her door at her house, then just searched through her house, found posters in her car, and that's how it started, right? How they arrested her.
Yes, so they took the action in April 2019, and in early May, Elzbieta was here for Liberation Day. She was here in the Netherlands, so on the 5th of May, and she was explaining about another case of where she protested against fascism, where she was also charged. So she was here in the Netherlands, she was explaining about that case, and I met with her, and I remember that we brought her to the airport, and she was so immensely tired. She said, I've been explaining about this case to everyone, and I just want to sleep. And the next morning at 6 a.m., so she flew home to Poland. Next morning, 6 a.m., people knocked on her door, searched her home, eventually found the posters in her car, and then she was arrested. And I remember reading that, and the first thing I thought wasn't even what kind of injustice this, but just let her sleep, like let her get some rest. And so that has been a very also traumatizing experience for her. And then Anna and Joanna stepped forward themselves and said, if she is being charged for this, we also took part in this action, so we should be part of this.
Because it's expression of freedom to make a poster like this, right?
Definitely. It's definitely, and that's the interesting thing. Freedom of expression is used very often in Poland as a reason not to pursue anyone who says something homophobic, for example, because then it's freedom of expression. But suddenly, if it's about religious feelings, then you can be charged in court. Yeah,
because they touch religion, then it becomes much worse. But they went to court. This became a big case in Poland. And the 2nd of March, they... the court decided that they were let go.
Yeah. So this, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, please.
Yeah, no, indeed. On the 2nd of March, it was decided that they weren't released. They weren't in prison, but they were acquitted. And the the judge was very, very clear about it, that there was no intention to hurt, that there was no intention to offend any religious feelings, that this was all in the eyes of the beholder, because she recognized that for these 3 women and for the whole LGBT plus community, the rainbow halo is a sign of love. So how, and that's also the hashtag that made, that went around in Polish Twitter around that time, is that a rainbow cannot offend. Why can a sign of unconditional love offend religious feelings? That's in their feelings, that is in their perception, but that was not the intention of the people who brought up these, who printed these posters and who spread these posters.
Yeah.
So I think that was really, really positive to hear, and also how the judge, really went into the fact, like, what were the motivations of these 3 women and the situation of the LGBT plus community in Poland, and the fact that this was maybe a provocative action, but it was part of a political debate, and that political debate needs to be held. But I also have an update, by the way.
Yeah, but is it also like the whole politics and the church, they are very close, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And also the people behind this, so the people, it was the priest of the church who brought the charges, but also, again, that ultra-Catholic group that is pulling so much of the strings and organizing so much of the actions in Poland. The update that I want to give, it's an hour ago, we heard that the Polish state will appeal. So the women are not, well, they are acquitted on the first count, but this will go on, and they might still face either prison or other punishments.
So it's not done. They will continue.
Yes.
And is there anything they know already, like when it's the next step is going to happen?
Yeah, so this is so I heard this an hour ago.
Just an hour ago, yeah.
Yeah, this is really new, but we expect within the next 2 or 3 months that the next trial would take place.
Okay, and then Lotte, because what can people do, and what are you doing in this case of the 3 ladies, Elzbieta, Joanna, and Anna? What are you doing to help, and what can people do to help?
I think the most important thing that people can do is sign the petition online and just spread the word. Spread the word.
Spread the word.
Yeah, sorry. Spread the word about this amazing woman. I think that's the most important thing. And for now, we're like in, out of my head, 5 cities in the Netherlands, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, The Hague, Eindhoven, Nijmegen, Zwolle. Oh, 6, I'm so sorry. 6 cities in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, where we are, we're like supporting this woman. And I think for now, for Rotterdam, because we have, of course, we have the Eurovision Songfestival. And like Lucy said, in Poland, they have like LHTBI plus free zones. We want to organize an LHTBI welcome zone near the stadium of Ahoy, near the Eurovision stadium, so that everybody is welcome there, and with lots of rainbows and glitters and boas and feathers. And
just bring it on.
Yes, just the
some glitter with it.
Yes.
But when is this happening?
We don't know yet. We're just like thinking about it, what's the best time to do this, and yeah, it's still a work in progress, but we're thinking about it.
But people can also like send cards online. Can you tell something about that?
Yeah, it's like I think it's really easy. You go to amnesty.nl/Poolse vrouwen.
Yes.
Lekker Dutch gezegd. And then you can sign the petition and you can send a card, just like the card that I showed, like this one.
Yeah.
And then you can send it to the woman. And for all the cities that I just named, like Amsterdam, Rotterdam, we also have a greetings card, especially from that city. So we have a card from Rotterdam with a statue here, and from The Hague with with Haagse Harry. So I think it's, yeah.
Yeah, it makes it more clear when you go to the website and then you see the examples on the website, then it all comes together, then you totally get it. And it's about to support these women, right?
Yeah, it's about to support them and just to let them know that we're thinking about them and that we're supporting them in their battle and that our mind is with them.
Yeah, and it's very important to sign the petition on amnesty.nl. Which was also very interesting is that because we have such a long way to go if we, you know, we're fighting for LGBTQ plus rights worldwide, and I think you do a beautiful job with Amnesty International, but I read that Elsbita, you invited, or Amnesty invited her to come to Pride Amsterdam, and she was here, and then she was so overwhelmed with the love, and that policemen were like throwing hearts with fingers, and in her country and in her cities in Poland, they were throwing rocks, you know, at the LGBT community, and they're throwing and just calling names and saying horrible things, and it's such a big difference, and there's so much going on. And I also understood that Elsbita is not even part of the LGBT community, right?
Yeah, she's an ally.
Yeah, she's an ally, and she is such a fighter. Let's also talk a little bit about the women's rights, because the women's rights and the LGBT community, they are very close. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, no, definitely, and they are facing the same mechanisms and the same lobbyists, the same groups that are attacking. It's not. It makes sense. They are attacking gender and they're attacking LGBTQ plus as if it is the same, right? For them, all of this is something that is un-Christian, un-Catholic. Women that want to behave beyond their roles that are enshrined in the Bible, or people who want to love who they love. If it's not in their worldview of a man and a woman who get married and get children and whatever you need to do according to the Bible, it is wrong. And they are so powerful. So we see that all these different initiatives from the LGBTQ plus zones happening across 1/3 of Poland now, the almost total ban on abortion, the chance that Poland will leave from the Istanbul Convention on violence against women, on domestic violence. All of these things, laws about sexual education in schools, all of this comes from that same group of people who have a lot of power and who just will hit anything they can. And indeed, I know that from friends in Poland, that these two communities, the women's rights community and the LGBTQ plus community, they are allies in this. And it's wonderful to see so many rainbow flags at women's marches and so many women's groups joining in the prides or the equality marches, as they're called in Poland. They are really fighting and in this together. They're in the same boat.
Yeah, definitely. If there might be people watching right now from Poland, then please come to the breakout rooms after this. So to connect and to learn from each other, to talk with each other, because in the end, they are the people who are living the life in Poland, and they know exactly how it's going on. And I always hated to see that there's so much difference, you know, in the world. But I think it's good that we connect together and that we hear each other's stories. And I think you both are doing a wonderful job. So keep up your wonderful job. And thank you so much for tell us more information about Amnesty International. So Christy, Lotte, thank you very much. And you both will go to the breakout room, so people can talk with you girls over there.
Yeah. Yes, and sign the greeting cards.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Then I go here, and well, I think, yeah, we're at the end of our guest speakers. So it's time to go to the breakout rooms. And so if you scroll a little bit down, you see the right website and the link where you have to go to the breakout rooms. And via this platform, you can click in the room you want to go and ask questions with ILGA Europe, Amnesty International, Rainbow Cities, Erasmus Pride, and Door to Door. Yeah. If you can leave anytime you want and switch to another room and see what's going on there. Yeah.
Peter, it's important that they don't do it now. We have to give the host like 5 minutes to enter their room and log in. So I would encourage people to take a toilet break, have a drink of water.
Yes,
and
don't go anywhere. And then we should invite the hosts to go to their breakout room, go to their own room. I hope everybody can find the link. Maybe somebody even put it in the comments. And then have a little 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes break, get yourself a drink, go to the toilet, and then we hope to see you in the breakout room.